In this video, we will be briefly going over the history of cardistry. To understand cardistry as an art form, we believe it is important to know how far cardistry has come and how we got here. So let's begin. The oldest card flourishes such as the spring, fan, and ribbon spread have roots that are almost impossible to track down. So we won't be focusing on those. Instead, we will start at what we believe is the first point where an effort was made to separate card flourishing from magic. And this was in 1999 when Brian Tudor released the first project that taught card flourishing and card flourishing only, Show Off Volume 1. The next step was in 2001 when DeVoe started the first platform for card flourishing, Handlords. Card flourishing's independence from magic was further solidified when DeVoe's good friend Jerry Siskowski published his book, The Encyclopedia of Playing Card Flourishes, in 2002. We could have a whole video discussing this book alone, but at its core it is by far the widest collection of card flourishes in a single source, even till this day. In this book, Jerry drew the distinction between card flourishes and card tricks. He explained that a card trick is a magical effect, a flourish is not. Note that at this point our art still wasn't called cardistry, but our fancy shuffling of cards was predominantly referred to as card flourishing instead. Together, DeVoe and Jerry formed a community and popularized the use of the term XCM for card flourishing. This stood for Extreme Card Manipulation. The spirit of this name was also reflected in the moves that the people did at the time. There was a heavy emphasis on practicing and perfecting extremely challenging moves. People approached it more like an extreme sport than an art form. During this period, a couple of notable events occurred. The first was when Dan and Dave Buck introduced their style of packet cuts to the scene through their video Spring Jam 2003, and through releasing their DVD The System in the following year. Another was in 2006 when the first annual international competition for card flourishing was held. XCM and Handlords reigned dominant till about 2006 when a couple of members of the Handlords community, most notably Andre Zick and Richard Z, left to start a community called Technique. And Technique was a forum for people to share videos and discuss card flourishing. This was also when cardistry was first popularized as a term for card flourishing. The name cardistry is a portmanteau for card and artistry, and the spirit of this name was also reflected in the moves that people did. People in the cardistry community focused more on creativity, artistry, and flow than practicing and perfecting extremely hard moves like the XCM community did. Apart from that, the way card flourishing was presented also became more and more important to the community. So it was during this era that people started putting significant effort into filming and editing cardistry videos. The XCM and cardistry community coexisted with some tension for a couple of years, but over time, more and more people preferred cardistry's general style and emphasis on creativity. The XCM community also became more and more exclusive, and so it started dwindling, and cardistry eventually became the commonly used term for the art of card flourishing. By 2010, though Technique has shut down, more and more brands, companies, and platforms that targeted the cardistry community were formed. These include Theory 11, Dan and Dave, United Cardists, and Cardistry spelt with a K. Each of these entities had significant impact on the community, and I could have easily done a video on each of them, but to keep this video concise, we will move on. By 2015, there were multiple brands that were formed exclusively by and for cardists. Cardistry also gained more and more exposure in mainstream media as more and more cardists were featured on national television programs, news, advertisements, and on large-scale media platforms like 9gag, Unilad, and People Are Awesome. And that leads us to where we are today. The cardistry scene and community has grown rapidly over the years, but it is still a relatively young art form, and we can't wait to see what is to come for cardistry in the future.